For this project, we're going to use PDF plans of the Black Box Theater to create a 3D model. So we'll start by creating a new file using our template, and then save that file as Project 10. Next, we're going to create some new classes. Under the stage category. So first we'll create a new class called stage dash lighting positions. The dash creates a subclass. Next, we'll create a new class called stage dash seating dash audience risers. Another new class called stage dash seating dash audience chairs 2D, and finally a new class called stage dash seating dash audience chairs 3D. We'll then put ourselves in the stage main class so that everything we create from now until we change it will be in this class. Next, we're going to import the PDF. So File, Import, Import PDF. Find the blank black box PDF from WebCourses. And import pages 3 to 3. You can only import one page at a time unless you do all of them. And make sure to check Snap to Geometry. This brings in the plan of the black box with all of the seating, but without the lighting positions. Next, choose the Polygon tool and trace around the overall outline of the black box in order to create the floor. When that's complete, extrude the floor -6 inches. Next, we'll use the Wall tool to draw the walls. Click on the Wall tool preferences and set the thickness of the wall to 8 inches. And make sure you're on the first mode, left control mode. Start here on the smaller wall and draw to the corner, and then double click to end here. Back to the wall preferences, change the thickness to 14 inches. Start and draw the thicker wall around the room. Double click to finish. Select all walls and set the fill to 40% gray. Next, we need to connect the small and large walls. So use the Wall Join tool, set to the second mode, the L Join mode, and click on one wall and click on the other. It does not matter the order. So you can click on the small wall and then click on the large wall, or the other way. You can see how those walls join. Next, select all the walls. Making sure that you have all 9 walls selected. And change the height to 26 feet. We can now switch to an isometric view and OpenGL to see the walls that we've drawn. Back to top. Next, we'll draw this small room that encloses the spiral staircase. So back to the wall tool, preferences, put the thickness back to 8 inches. You want to be in the third mode, right control mode. Click here and then look for endpoint and double click. Start here and look for endpoint again, double click. This is where the straight turns into the curve. Then select the round wall tool in the third mode, right control mode, and in the second mode here, 3 points mode, and click on this point and the center point and this point, and it will create a curved wall and will automatically join all of 3 walls together. Then select all 3 parts and set the fill to 40% gray. Next, we'll install doors. So select the door tool and then click on preferences. We'll set the width of the door to 2 feet 6 or 30 inches. You can leave everything else here the same. Select jamb. Change the depth of the jamb to 6 inches, and then select hardware, include hardware, and you're looking for commercial passage set lever, no closer. Click on the wall to insert the door, and then move your mouse to orient the door in the right direction. You'll notice that the jamb is not set flush to the wall, so if you go to Object Info, and look at offset in wall, type in 1 inch, and that will offset the wall 1 inch towards the door. Then with the door still selected, set the fill to 40% gray. Back to the door tool, back to preferences. We're now going to change the width to 6 feet, and we're going to change the type to swing bipart, which is a double door. The jamb can stay at 6 inches, and the hardware can stay at commercial passage set lever. Click OK. Insert the door in the wall here. Change the offset in wall to -1 inch, and then set the fill of the wall, of the door to 40% gray. You'll notice there's a slight discrepancy between this and the PDF plan, but that's okay. Back to the door tool. We'll insert the same door here. Change the offset in wall to 4 inches. Change the fill to 40% gray. Insert the same door on the other side. Change the offset to 4 inches. And set the fill again to 40% gray. Select both of the last doors. Go to Settings, Hardware, and change to Commercial Panic Biparting. This is the push bars that allow you to exit during a fire. Then change to isometric and OpenGL, and you can see the finished walls with the doors. Back to top. Select the line tool, and we're looking for the point that says endpoint. This is where the straight section and the curved section of the risers connect. So find that point. We'll do the same thing over here. Look for the endpoint. Make sure there's a point there. Keep drawing until you find that endpoint. Click, hold down Shift, and pull the line past the end of the last riser. This is going to help us draw this shape. Now use the polygon tool and trace around the shape using the line that we just drew as the point to indicate where we're going to start a curve. Go over to the other line and continue tracing around the riser. Use this point to indicate the start of a curve. Curve there as well. Here, and then back to the start. Set the fill to none so we can see as we're working, and then use the reshape tool. Set to add radius curve. Click here and pull down to match that curve, and click here to pull down to match that curve. We'll then repeat this process on this section of risers. Click here. Click here. Here to indicate the start of a curve. Here as well. Finish. Use the reshape tool. Set the fill to none. Match this curve. Match this curve. And then set the fill back to solid. I forgot to mention that I previously set the fill of the first platform to solid as well. Now we're going to trace around the third platform. Set the fill to none. Use the reshape tool. Match this curve and this curve. Set the fill back to solid. And then finally, trace the final platform. Set the fill to none. Use the reshape tool. And match this curve and this curve. Now draw this rectangle where the steps are. And select the rectangle and the platform and modify clip surface in order to cut out a notch in the platform where the stairs go. Then you can set the platform to solid. Select the two guidelines and delete them. Then select the first platform, and the second, and the third, and the fourth. And put them in the class Audience Risers. Select the first platform only and extrude it 8.25 inches. The second platform and extrude it 16.5 inches. The third platform, extrude it 24.75 inches. And the fourth platform, and extrude it 33 inches. Now's a good time to save. We're going to create a new RenderWorks texture now. RenderWorks texture, create. We're going to call this Theater Black. It's going to be a solid color, and we're going to set it to 80% gray. This will be the black surface for all of the black items in the black box. Select all 4 risers. Go to the Render tab in Object Info, set them to Texture and Texture Theater Black. Also, set their fill to 10% gray, which you won't see immediately. Go to the Spotlight menu and use Architecture, create Auto Hybrid to turn them into Auto 2D, 3D symbols. If you then go to Isometric and OpenGL, you can see the effect. Their black color is the black texture when they're in 3D. And then if we go back to top, their gray color is the fill color in 2D. Since virtually everything in the theater is black, we're going to take a moment now to set the entire stage main class to have a black texture. So select the stage main class, edit, go to select Music Creation, and we'll go ahead and change the line thickness to 0.25. Then go to Textures, select Music Creation, and turn on the textures of objects and component textures and walls, and then set all of these to Theater Black. This way, everything that we create that's in the stage main texture will automatically have the Theater Black texture. I'm sorry, the theater main class will all automatically have the black theater texture attached to it. If you go to OpenGL and use the flyover tool, you can see that now that all of the doors that previously were gray are now black because they're in the stage main class. We're now going to import the PDF again, only this time we're going to import page 2, which is the section which shows us, amongst other things, the railings, which we'll now create. Use the 2D double line polygon tool set to 1.5 inches in left control mode, and draw this upright and double click to end. This upright I'm going slightly past, double click to end. This upright going slightly past, double click to end. And now we'll switch to the third control mode, start at this point, and trace around the rest of the railing. Here I'm looking for points or endpoints where straight segments change to curved segments. You'll see the cursor says point or endpoint. And go slightly past and double click to finish. Now we'll use the reshape tool set to add radius. We'll match this curve. we'll match this curve. You'll see that even though it's solid, you can still grab the curve that's underneath. We'll match that curve and that curve. And then we're going to clean this up just slightly by going to the reshape tool and moving this point over to there. When you do the double line, the points on either side of this curve are not necessarily in the same place. So we lined it up with the outside points. Now we're adjusting the inside points. This is really just fine tuning. Once that is complete, select all 4 components and modify Add Surface. We'll then extrude 1.5 inches. Switch to left view and rotate right, which stands it up. Then switch back to top view and rotate right again, which orients it, upstage, downstage. It's a little confusing because we're looking at the section in top view, so it looks like we're looking at it from the side, but in fact we're not. The drawing itself is in top, it's just that the PDF is looking in a different direction. So then come back to this part of the drawing and line up your handrail with the handrail in the PDF. You'll notice that handrail is round. I'll talk about that in a minute. Switch to left view and turn audience risers on if they're not already. And then line up the railing so that the bottom of it is flush with the bottom step, which should make the bottoms of the other 2 railings flush with the tops of the second and third steps. Back to OpenGL for a moment and use the flyover tool, and you can see the railing in place. We'll now create the railing for the back steps. We'll create the steps themselves first, so we'll use the polygon tool to trace around the carriage. Then we'll extrude that 1.5 inches and use the rectangle tool to draw the stairs themselves. Select all 4 of them and extrude them 36 inches. Switch to left. Move the carriage down so that the top of it is flush with the bottom of the stairs. Use the mirror tool to mirror the carriage across to the other side of the stairs. Then if we go to isometric, we can see what we have. The bottom carriage is underneath the PDF right now. Back to top plan, now back to left. Then rotate right and pull down so that the stairs are sitting at the 0 level. And then if we go back to top with everything selected, we'll move it out of the way, and then we'll rotate right to get the stairs oriented properly for the drawing. Next, we'll use the double line polygon tool in the first control mode to draw this railing. Double click to end. Go back to the third control mode. Looking for points as guidance. Draw the overall shape of this part of the railing. You have to find the point in the center of the upright where the change in angle occurs there. Double click to end. Use the Add Curve Modify tool to match these curves. We'll go back and clean that up in a minute. We'll set that to none, and then we'll use the Move Point tool to move this point back until we find the point where the curve intersects the straight line on the PDF. Back to the Add Curve. We'll match these curves. Back to the Move Point tool. We'll move this point back until we find an appropriate point. And we'll do the same thing here. Now, extrude this part 1.5 inches and extrude this part 1.5 inches. Select them both, switch to left, rotate them both to the right to stand them up, back to top, rotate right again, and then pull them down. Select the longer section, which is going to be the one on top, and move it to the right 1.5 inches. If you rotate around, you can see what we've done. We've moved the actual handrail in towards the stairs, so it's sitting beside the uprights. Then select them both and line up the upright with the bottom corner of the stairs. Mirror that across the stairs. Select them both, move them down out of the way. If you look at it in isometric now, you can see what this looks like. And now we need to deselect the stairs, which may be easier done in top view. Then back to isometric to deselect the carriages. Back to left, and now raise the railing up so that it meets the stairs, so that the railing, the bottom of the railing, is at the top of the bottom step. Back to isometric so we can see what we've done. Select all of it. Back to top. Move it over. Using the center of the bottom step, place the stairs. If we then go back to isometric and use the flyover tool, we can see the stairs. It looks like our handrail is not set to solid, so we'll select the two handrails, set them to solid. Back to top. Now's a good time to save. Back to the PDF, and we'll use the double line polygon tool again to create this small railing here that's on the fourth riser. So outline that section and then do the crossbar. Hold down Shift to constrain it to be horizontal. Double click to finish. Select both parts, modify Add Surface, extrude them 1.5 inches, switch to left view and rotate right to stand it up, back to top, rotate right again to orient it upstage, downstage, drag it over, turn off audience risers momentarily so we can see the PDF underneath, and then move the railing into place. Switch to left, turn the audience risers back on, and move the railing up so that it sits on top of the highest platform. Back to top, and now use the mirror tool to mirror the railing across the center, and you can use your center railing as the center point. Turn the audience risers off momentarily and make sure that that's in the right place according to the PDF. Back to the other PDF, we're now going to create the last railing on the side here. It's a little hard to tell where these actually stop, so we're just going to assume they go all the way to the floor. They might sit on top of the platform, but ultimately, for our purposes, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to go back to the double line polygon tool, set to 1.5 inches. We'll draw the uprights first, double click to end, and sometimes it does this. It's okay, we can cut that off. It's often faster just to let that happen and cut it off rather than trying to make sure it turns out square. And sometimes it does turn out square. We're going to draw a line at the top of the floor here and select those two uprights and do a modify clip surface in order to cut off the little triangle parts. So delete the line and then delete the two triangles if you have them. Back to the double line tool in the third mode. Going to trace this shape, and then we'll also do the top shape. Once again, looking for the points where the straight lines connect with the curves. Double click, did it again. We can just use the reshape tool to pull that point back where it goes. And we're going to extend this slightly past and then use the reshape add curve function to match these curves. And then we'll use the reshape move function to adjust anywhere that needs to be adjusted. We can then select all 6 pieces, add surface, extrude 1.5 inches, switch to left, rotate right to stand them up, back to top, rotate right to orient them upstage, downstage, and then pull it over to this drawing and line it up with the PDF. Switch to left, turn the risers back on, and raise the railing up so that it sits on the floor. Back to top, use the mirror tool, mirror across the center line, which right now is the center of the railing. And save. Next, we're going to create these railings, which have to be created in a slightly different way because they're curved in plan view. So we're going to use the double line tool to trace these from the top now, looking for that endpoint where the straight meets the curve. Double click here to end. Then use the reshape tool in add curve mode to match the curve. I'm going to draw two rectangles that are 1.5 inches square. These will be the uprights eventually. Now, you'll notice that the railings we've been creating are all square. The ones in the drawing are round. That's because those were created with extrude along path. In much the same way that we're doing these, the shapes, the overall outline of the railings was drawn with a single line polygon tool, and then circles were extruded. That just is more time intensive and also takes up a lot more processing power, and ultimately at the scale we're working at, you can't really tell the difference between the round railings and the square railings, so that's why we're just doing all of this in square. I just went to Vectorworks preferences and turned off zoom line thicknesses in the display tab so that I can see more clearly how to line these things up. So I'm putting one rectangle there at the end and then rotated it to match the angle of the curve. I'm putting another one here at this end. I will line it up there with that point and use the rotate tool again to line it up with the large curve. And then you'll notice that my curve is not squared off on the end. Once I get this lined up, you'll notice that. So I'm going to use the reshape tool to move the point of the large curve so that it matches the corner of the rectangle. And then I need to finally duplicate the rectangle again and put one in the center. It's a little difficult to determine the center of this because it's curved and not symmetrical. So I'm going to just sort of make an educated guess that it's right here. I could look at the PDF and make an actual measurement, but ultimately exactly where that upright is not super critical. Now I'm going to use the line tool back in this PDF to determine the height of these is 2 feet 10. So then I will select my 3 rectangles and extrude them 2 feet 10. And then extrude the top curve 1.5 inches. Switch to left and raise the curve up and put it on top of the uprights. Select all 4 parts and use the mirror tool to mirror them across the center line, which is the center of the railing. Then if we look at this in isometric and OpenGL and flyover, we can see the completed risers. Actually, I'm going to select the center railing so that I can rotate around it with the flyover tool. We can see the completed risers and railings. And you'll see that they are automatically black because we set the texture of the class that they're in, the stage main, to automatically have the black texture. I'm now going to move this out of the way, which will make it easier to select all of these things. Only I do not want to select the railing. I want to select everything. I'm sorry, I don't want to select the platforms. I want to select everything except the platforms, and then set the fill of the railings to 10%. Then go to Spotlight, Architectural, and create Auto Hybrid. And you'll notice that 2 of the railings are slightly cut off. That's because the Auto Hybrid creates at 4 feet. We need to change that so that it generates at 8 feet, which is above the railings. That will make them complete. Let's set these now to seating audience risers, stage seating audience risers. And now if we go to isometric and fly over and OpenGL, you'll see that all of our railings and our stairs have now turned white. That's because that class had not yet had the black theater texture set yet. So in order to remedy that, we will edit our seating, our stage seating audience risers class. And while we're here, we'll set the thickness of the lines to 0.25, and we'll select Views at Creation, and then we'll go to Textures and turn on Texture for objects, and select the Theater Black texture, and then we click OK. Everything that's in that class will then have that texture applied to it. So now we're back to everything black. Back to top. This seems like a good time to save. We're going to select all of this and group it. And put it all in the Audience Risers class. And yes, we want it all to be in the Audience Risers class. Then we're going to put our PDF back, because we're going to put seats in next, and we need the PDF to guide where the seats go. We're going to turn the Audience Risers class off so that we can see the PDF underneath. Open the black box chair file from Web Courses. Select the chair, copy it. You can then close the file and paste the chair into your file. You probably won't get this dialog. Next, we're going to do some classing of the chair. So double click on it so that we can edit the components. We want to edit the 2D component, select all of the 2D components and put them in the stage seating audience chairs 2D class, and then exit symbol. And then double click on it again, and this time edit the 3D component. Select all of the 3D parts and put them in the scenic stage seating audience chairs 3D class. You can say yes to this and exit symbol. This way we have some control over whether the 3D chairs show up or not. Then put the entire symbol in the seating audience chairs 2D class. So the symbol itself is in the 2D class. The 2D part of the symbol is in the 2D class, but the 3D part of the symbol is in the 3D class. Then we're going to take the chair over and line it up with the PDF. We're going to grab it here by the arc and line the arcs up, and then use the rotate tool to line it up with the front of the chair. So there it is. And then we will switch to left and turn the risers on. And that first chair should be sitting on the floor, but then we'll make a duplicate and make sure that it's sitting on the first riser, and another duplicate and make sure that it's sitting on the second riser. Another duplicate and make sure that it's sitting on the next riser up. and then back to top plan, and we can take these newly duplicated chairs and put them in their respective rows. Then we'll make one more duplicate, and put it on the highest riser. Back to plan, we can turn audience risers off again and line this chair up with the PDF. Now we're going to use a new tool called Duplicate Along Path. And in order to do that, we're going to create a path. So we're going to use the arc tool in the 3-point mode. We're going to go from the center of the back chair to the center of that chair to the center of this chair, and we're going to create this arc that goes along the back of the chairs. Then we're going to select the first chair and go to Edit, Duplicate Along Path, and we want to make 4 copies. You include the chair and make sure that it's tangent and keep the original orientation and click OK, and that's what will happen. So that's pretty nifty. And then you can delete the curve. So now we have the 4 chairs in the right place. We're going to do the same thing with each row. So we're going to use now the polygon tool to draw from the center of that chair to our endpoint where the line and the arc intersect, over to the center of the last chair, double click to end, set this to none, and then use the reshape tool to add a radius curve to match that curve, and then select the newly drawn shape and that chair, duplicate along path. We're going to make 14 copies and click OK. And these aren't lined up exactly with the ones in the PDF, but I didn't have this tool available when I drew the original PDF. I laid all these chairs out by hand, so they were not spaced out evenly, as you can see. So this tool actually spaced them out more evenly. So we're going to do the same thing for the next row here. And it's not super important that the chairs are exactly in the same place, because there's no guarantee that the drawing has the chairs exactly where they are anyway, and we're not building anything based on the chairs. So now we're going to select the first chair and that curve, duplicate along path. There are 12 copies this time. Click OK. We'll do the same thing for the next row. Starting in the center of this chair, finding our endpoint, going to the center of this chair, double clicking, reshape, add curve, select the chair, we're going to count, then we're going to select the chair, duplicate along path, 13 copies this time. We'll draw the straight line here to duplicate these 5 chairs. So draw a straight line from the center of the first chair to the center of the last chair. Select the chair, duplicate along path. We're going to make 5 copies. Okay. The next 2 chairs, it seems easiest just to duplicate this chair, these 2 chairs, move them over, and adjust them by hand with the rotate tool to line up with the PDF. We'll duplicate that chair and move it over here. And then I think once again, it's easier just to hand rotate these last 3 chairs into place. And that should be all of the chairs. We're now going to slide the PDF out of the way so we can check and make sure that all the chairs are there. We'll put the PDF back. And then we're going to select all of these chairs and then make sure to deselect the wall if you have selected it as well. And then we can mirror the chairs across the center line, once again using the railing as the center. There we have all the chairs. So then we can get rid of any of the curves that are left that we used to distribute along, so we can delete that one. It actually would have probably been more efficient to delete all of those before we did the mirroring, but next time. Get rid of that straight line. And actually, if we just get the PDF out of the way, we can see where there may be curves left. There's one there. There's one. There's one. There's one. Oh, there were 2 there. There's that one. Here, I believe, is the final one. And then if we turn the audience risers back on, we can select all of the chairs and the audience risers and group them. We want to make sure that we're in the None class before we create the group, because we don't want to change any of the classing of the things that are inside the group, because we want to make sure that we have control over turning the 2D and 3D components of these things on and off, because often you'll want to work with the 3D chairs off because they take up lots of processing resources, but you may want the 2D chairs on so that you can tell where things go in the space. So that completes the space itself. Next week, we will add the lighting positions and the tension grid and create final drawings.